Malcolm's story wasn't just a tragedy, it was a warning. The official line was simple: he drowned, CPR was given, and that was it. Case closed. But when has anything in this industry ever been that clean? Because when you start connecting the dots, Malcolm's accident looks less like bad luck and more like part of a cycle. The same cycle Dave Chappelle warned us about before he walked away from millions. The same energy that left Chloe Bailey breaking down in tears. The same shadows that made Cat Williams say he couldn't even sleep without protection. Too many names, too many eerie similarities. And by the time you hear how deep this pattern runs, you'll understand why some fans believe Malcolm's ending wasn't random at all. It was a message. Real quick, hit that subscribe button if you want the stories the blogs won't dare unpack, and drop your thoughts below, because I actually reply to y'all. Now let's get into it. The official story was neat, almost too neat. They said Malcolm drowned, CPR was performed, and the case was closed within hours. Tragic accident, nothing more to see. But when has this industry ever worked that clean? People who knew him were confused from the start. Malcolm was young, healthy, disciplined, a rising star with everything going for him. He wasn't the type to suddenly collapse under the pressure of a random night, and yet the headlines gave us nothing but the same two words: tragic accident. Fans began asking the same question: how does someone at the peak of their career just vanish like that? The timing was odd, the location raised eyebrows, and even the way the news broke felt off. Too quick, too packaged, like someone wanted the narrative sealed tight before anyone could dig deeper. And once you step past those surface headlines, that's when the cracks start showing. Because Malcolm's story doesn't stand on its own. It lines up almost perfectly with a pattern we've seen play out again and again in this business. Sudden endings, unanswered questions, and careers cut short right as they were gaining momentum. Now, think about this. If Malcolm's case was really so straightforward, why does it echo stories from other artists who've warned us about the industry's darker side? Why do the same details, rushed explanations, strange circumstances, eerie silence afterwards keep repeating like a script we weren't meant to notice? And here's where things get even crazier. Because this isn't just about Malcolm. Years before his tragedy, another superstar, Dave Chappelle, dropped hints that sound almost prophetic. And when you line his words up next to Malcolm's so-called accident, the picture that forms is too unsettling to brush off. Years before Malcolm's story hit the headlines, Dave Chappelle went public with words that fans now look back on as a warning. Remember when he walked away from that $50 million Comedy Central deal? At the time, people laughed. They called him paranoid, unstable, even ungrateful. But Dave himself made it clear, it wasn't about money, it was about the system. He described Hollywood as a place where contracts don't just bind your career, they trap your soul. A place where if you refuse to play along, the consequences are heavy. Dave hinted that when stars push back, they don't just lose opportunities, sometimes they disappear. Now, when he first said that, people thought it was a joke, just another wild Chappelle bit. But years later, after watching star after star go through the same suspicious endings, his words don't sound like comedy at all. They sound like confession. And here's the part that makes it hit even harder. Dave admitted that walking away was the only way he could survive. Think about it. Most people dream of $50 million, but he saw it as a cage. And when you connect that to Malcolm's story, doesn't it feel like Dave was spelling out exactly what happens when you don't walk away? Fans now connect those dots directly. Dave saw the darkness, refused to play, and escaped. Malcolm rose fast, played the game on his terms, and suddenly, he was gone. The contrast is chilling, and this isn't just about Dave. Because while he was cracking uncomfortable jokes and ducking out of the spotlight, other stars were breaking down in their own ways. And one of the most emotional examples? Chloe Bailey, whose raw breakdown left fans convinced she wasn't just crying for herself. She was crying because she saw the same machine Malcolm couldn't escape. When Chloe Bailey broke down in front of the world, it wasn't just a celebrity getting emotional. The way she cried, the way her voice cracked, it hit people differently. Fans said it looked like she was carrying the weight of something much bigger than her own personal struggles. She spoke about the pressure, about feeling powerless, about moments where it seemed like she had no control over her own career. And that word, powerless, stuck with people. Because isn't that the same energy Dave Chappelle described when he said the industry owns you if you don't play along? Clips of Chloe's breakdown spread fast across social media. Some fans swore she was crying not just for herself, but because she recognized the same darkness that took Malcolm. Others said her tears looked like the cracks of someone who'd seen things behind the curtain. Things she couldn't speak on directly without risking everything. And here's the thing. Fans didn't brush it off. They treated it like confirmation. First Dave with his warnings, then Chloe, breaking down under the same pressures. And in between all of that, Malcolm's sudden accident. When you line those stories up, it starts to feel less like coincidence and more like a pattern screaming in our faces. But Chloe's story wasn't the only one. Because if she showed us the pain, there's another star who took it even further, turning that pain into outright paranoia. A comedian who said he couldn't even sleep without protection. And once you hear what Cat Williams went through, you'll understand why Malcolm's story feels like part of something much bigger. Now let's talk about Cat Williams. Because if Dave Chappelle gave us warnings and Chloe Bailey gave us raw emotion, Cat flat out put his fear on display. He went on interviews saying things that sounded so wild at the time people laughed them off. But now, when you place his words next to Malcolm's tragedy, they don't sound funny anymore. They sound terrifying. Cat admitted that he didn't even feel safe in his own home. He claimed there were nights he slept in a Kevlar vest, like he was preparing for someone to come after him. Imagine that. A comedian at the height of his career, armored up just to make it through the night. And it didn't stop there. He said that when you refuse to play by the rules of this industry, the game doesn't just cut your paycheck, it puts you in danger. Arrests out of nowhere, rumors planted in the media, friendships turning cold overnight. He called it sabotage. Fans call it survival. For years, people dismissed him as paranoid. But here's where it gets strange. Every time he spoke out, something negative seemed to follow. Headlines about fights, arrests, contracts falling apart. Was that just bad luck, or was it the machine making an example out of him? Now, put that paranoia side by side with Malcolm's sudden accident. Cat said the quiet part out loud. The game doesn't let you walk away clean. And when fans heard Malcolm's story, they immediately thought back to Cat's warnings. And it's not just Cat, because once you start stacking these voices, Dave, Chloe, Cat, a pattern starts screaming back at you. And the scariest part? These aren't isolated cases, because while Cat was bracing for sabotage, other legends, Lauryn Hill, Kanye West, even Michael Jackson, went through their own battles against the same system, and their stories make the cycle even harder to ignore. If Cat Williams showed us paranoia, then Lauryn Hill showed us silence. At the peak of her career, with one of the most celebrated albums of all time, she suddenly stepped away. Fans were left confused, wondering why someone with so much talent and momentum would just walk. Years later, she admitted that the pressures, the manipulation, the contracts, all of it nearly destroyed her. Doesn't that sound familiar? Then there's Kanye West. Love him or hate him, you can't deny he's been screaming about the system for years. He went on stage, in interviews, even in rants online, calling the industry modern-day slavery. People laughed, called him erratic, unstable. But how many times have we seen this play before? An artist points out the darkness, the media paints them as crazy, and then the machine moves on like nothing happened. And then the biggest warning of them all, Michael Jackson, the king of pop. Near the end of his life, he started speaking openly about corruption in the industry. He said powerful people were trying to silence him, that his masters were stolen, that the system was broken. At the time, people brushed it off, said he was just bitter, but then he was gone. And looking back now, his words don't feel like complaints. They feel like the same breadcrumbs Dave, Chloe, and Cat all left behind. So when fans hear Malcolm's story, they don't just see a drowning. They see a pattern that stretches from Lauryn Hill's silence, to Kanye's anger, to Michael's warnings. A pattern where the bigger the star gets, the more dangerous the game becomes. And that's why people don't believe Malcolm's case was just random, because history keeps repeating itself. And the next examples? They're even harder to dismiss. Because while some legends managed to escape or survive, others didn't make it out at all. And their endings look eerily similar to Malcolm's. This is where the pattern gets impossible to ignore. Because if you look at some of the greatest names of all time, Whitney Houston, Prince, Tupac, the way their stories ended lines up with the same eerie cycle fans believe took Malcolm. Take Whitney Houston. Officially, they said she drowned in a hotel bathtub. Tragic, heartbreaking, but supposedly straightforward. Yet the timing was strange, the circumstances murky, and just like Malcolm, the explanations felt rushed. Fans asked, how does someone so powerful, so watched, just vanish like that with no clear answers? Then there's Prince. Before his sudden passing, he was outspoken about ownership. He went public about how he didn't trust the system, how he fought for control of his music, how he didn't want to be another artist trapped in the machine. He even warned us in interviews, straight to the camera, that the industry was more dangerous than people realized. Months later, he was gone. And when you compare his warnings to Dave's to Michael Jackson's, the echoes are chilling. And Tupac, one of the boldest voices to ever call out the system, left behind words that sounded less like rap and more like prophecy. He warned us about betrayal, about being targeted, about powerful enemies. Then suddenly, his story ended under circumstances that still spark debates decades later. Was it just chance, or was it another piece of the same cycle? Now think about it. Whitney, Prince, Tupac, three legends, all at the top, all gone under questionable circumstances. Add Malcolm's story to that list, and what do you see? Not isolated accidents, a cycle, a script that keeps repeating itself, almost word for word. And if the brightest stars of their generation couldn't escape, what chance does a rising star like Malcolm have? Fans say that's the real tragedy. It's not just that he's gone, it's that we saw it coming, and the industry keeps rolling like nothing happened. But here's where it gets even darker. Because while we've talked about the stars we lost, there are people inside the industry right now, bodyguards, producers, even fellow artists, who claim they've seen this playbook firsthand. And their whispers make Malcolm's story even harder to brush off. This is where things move from rumor to whispers, the kind that only come from people inside the machine. Former bodyguards, producers, even artists themselves have dropped hints that match up almost exactly with what we've been seeing. One bodyguard claimed he saw paperwork that didn't match the official story of a star's ending. Another insider said contracts were written in ways that gave the label more power over the artist's life than anyone realized. The whispers all circle the same idea. Once you sign, they own you. Your music, your image, your schedule, even your choices. And if you push back, you don't just risk your career, you risk everything. Cat Williams once said it out loud, "The game doesn't just cut your check, it cuts you." Fans laughed at the time, but when you line up what insiders describe, the pressure, the surveillance, the sudden coincidences, it doesn't sound like paranoia anymore. It sounds like a warning. One producer admitted in an anonymous interview that artists who don't cooperate don't just lose gigs. Suddenly, they're surrounded by people who don't care whether they thrive or survive. The security disappears, the protection vanishes, and one bad night is all it takes for tragedy to strike. And doesn't that sound exactly like Malcolm's case? A star rising fast, suddenly left vulnerable, and then gone under circumstances that felt rushed and incomplete. Fans are now asking, if insiders have been whispering about this for decades, why hasn't anything changed? Maybe that's the point. Maybe this cycle is too profitable for the machine to ever stop. But if that's true, then we're not just talking about Malcolm, or Dave, or Chloe, or Kat. We're talking about a system designed to repeat the same ending over and over again. And that brings us straight into the heart of it, the cycle itself. Because once you see the full pattern, you'll realize Malcolm's story wasn't an accident. It was a chapter. And the cycle? It's still running. Now let's lay it all out, the cycle. Because once you see the steps, it becomes almost impossible not to recognize it playing out again and again. Step 1. The rise. A new star emerges out of nowhere. They've got talent, they've got buzz, and the machine gets behind them. Suddenly, their face is everywhere, trending online, booked for festivals, plastered across magazines. The machine knows how to build hype, and it does it fast. Malcolm's rise fit this perfectly. One viral song, one massive push, and he was everywhere. Step 2. The resistance. This is when things start to change. The artist wants control. They start asking questions. Maybe they don't like the contracts. Maybe they don't play along with the politics. Maybe they want to keep their own voice. And that's when the machine stops seeing them as an asset and starts seeing them as a problem. Dave Chappelle hit this stage. Lauryn Hill hit this stage. Even Michael Jackson hit this stage. Step 3. The punishment. Once the resistance begins, the cracks appear. Headlines turn sour. Friendships in the industry go cold. Rumors start to circulate. Out of nowhere, the same media that once praised them now tears them down. Cat Williams lived this stage, facing backlash after backlash, until people dismissed him as paranoid. And then there's the final step, the removal. This is the stage fans fear most, because in too many cases it ends the same way. Suddenly, unexpectedly, and always under questionable circumstances. Whitney, Prince, Tupac, all gone too soon, all surrounded by unanswered questions. And now, Malcolm. Look at the cycle. Rise, resistance, punishment, removal. Over and over, generation after generation. And the scariest part? The machine doesn't even hide it anymore. Because while fans are busy grieving, the cycle resets with the next new face. So was Malcolm's ending really an accident? Or was he simply the latest chapter in a story this industry has been telling for decades? And if that's true, then we have to ask, who's next? Because the machine never sleeps. And as long as stars keep rising, this cycle will keep repeating. If you've been online since Malcolm's story broke, you already know the internet hasn't stayed quiet. Fans are connecting dots, digging through old interviews, and putting together theories that mainstream media refuses to touch. One corner of social media swears Malcolm was caught in the exact same cycle we laid out. They've made side-by-side edits of him with Whitney, Prince, Tupac, pointing out how the headlines all read the same way, how the explanations always sound rushed, and how the industry moves on too quickly. Others believe it wasn't just about the cycle. They say it was about control. They point to Dave Chappelle walking away, to Lauryn Hill stepping back, to Kanye screaming about contracts. Fans claim Malcolm's mistake wasn't talent or lifestyle, it was that he wanted too much control, too soon. And if that's true, it only fuels the idea that the machine made an example out of him. Then you've got the debates that split people down the middle. Some argue the industry is too powerful and artists can never win. Others say stars like Dave Chappelle proved you can escape, but only if you give up everything. And that's where it gets really emotional. Fans are left asking whether chasing fame is worth it at all. Viral threads have racked up millions of views, with people posting clips of Chloe Bailey's breakdown, Cat Williams' rants, Michael Jackson's speeches, all lined up with Malcolm's story. And the comments? They're filled with people saying the same thing. This isn't a coincidence, it's a pattern. But here's the wildest part. Every time fans start pulling too many receipts, the posts vanish, videos get taken down, threads mysteriously disappear, and that only makes people believe the whispers even more. So now the question isn't just about Malcolm. It's about the future. Because if fans are seeing the pattern this clearly, what happens to the next rising star who dares to resist? So what does all of this mean for artists today? If Malcolm's story fits the same cycle as Whitney, Prince, Tupac, Michael Jackson, Lauryn Hill, Kanye, Chloe, Kat, and even Dave, then it's not just history repeating. It's the machine showing us how it works in real time. For every star we've seen rise, resist, and fall, there's another one coming up behind them. Fresh faces, viral songs, overnight fame. The cycle always resets. And fans are left wondering, are we watching a new generation of talent or a new generation of targets? Look at the artists climbing right now. They're younger, faster, more connected than ever. But that doesn't mean they're safer. If anything, the pressure is heavier. Social media means mistakes spread faster. Contracts are tighter. The machine has even more ways to control the narrative. That's why so many fans see Malcolm's ending as more than just one tragedy. They see it as a warning shot to the next star who dares to think they can outplay the game. A reminder that fame is never free. It always comes with a price. And here's the scariest part. If Dave had to vanish overseas to escape, if Kat had to armor up just to sleep, if Chloe broke down in tears, and if legends like Whitney and Prince couldn't make it through, what chance does anyone have? Maybe that's the point. Maybe the cycle isn't meant to be broken. Maybe it's meant to keep running, forever. But if that's true, then we have to ask the question that fans can't stop whispering online. Who's next? Because the machine never sleeps, and as long as the cycle keeps spinning, someone new will always step into the spotlight. The only question is, how long will they last once they do? So keep your eyes open, stay locked in, and trust me, this story is far from over. So now I want to hear from you. Do you think Malcolm's story was just bad luck? Or was he another chapter in the cycle we've seen with Whitney, Prince, Tupac, and so many others? Drop your thoughts below. I actually read and reply to y'all. And if you're still watching, you're part of the family, so hit subscribe, tap that bell, and lock in with us. Because the next video, it's going to take this even further, and you don't want to miss it.